Give me a moment.
Hello, Rabbi. Hello, Kent.
Hello, John.
Hi, guys. I'll be right with you.
Hello, everybody.
How are you, David?
Fine, and you? Hello, Rabbi.
Hi, Dave.
Shavua Tov and Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh Tov. It's the 27th of the month, but you mean because we blessed the new month on Shabbos.
Yes. Okay.
On Thursday, you can wish us Chodesh Tov, and on Friday.
Okay. This was in advance.
Okay. You can always give blessings in advance.
Yeah.
All right, let's get the screen share going.
Hello, Kent.
Hi, David.
I had it and it got lost. Sorry, give me a moment. Okay. Turn to meeting, share screen. There we go. Okay. Hello, everybody, and ready to roll if you are.
Hello, Rabbi. Sorry?
Already.
Okay.
Already,
so
Rabbi.
we're doing the laws of Nidorim, the laws of vows, and we have learned this principle before, and that is that in the laws of vows, everything goes by local custom, vernacular, accepted meaning of words, phrases, and language. So one word might mean one something in South Africa, it might mean something else in America. If the person is making the vow in South Africa, it'll go by what that word is known as in South Africa. It will not help them say, well, in America, that's what it means. We go by local language. So in every locale and every time, that is what will determine, because we'll assume that when the person made a vow, that's what he meant. And maybe later he's looking to duck and dive and get out of it by saying that that's not what he meant, but we go by what local intent is. So it's quite long with a lot of examples, but basically there's one principle governing this whole chapter. And I put a bit of a teaser in my WhatsApp message before the shir to say, is an uncircumcised Jew still a Jew? I was asked that question yesterday in a different shir, but we'll talk about it because it's only towards the end of the chapter. So when we get there, we'll discuss it. I meant it in terms of the vows, which it appears in this chapter, but hopefully we'll expand on that a little bit at the end. I hope it won't be too late. So let's make a move. Halacha number 1, B'nedorim halech achar l'shoin b'nei odam ba'osa makom ba'osa loshon ba'osa zman. With regard to vows, we follow the intent of the words people use at that place, in that language, at that time when the vow or oath was taken. Which means, and now we give a whole list of examples. A person took a vow or an oath not to partake of cooked food. I'm vowing no more cooked food. Or for 30 days, or this week I'm going on a detox diet, no cooked food this week. And he makes a vow of that. Well, what do we mean by cooked food? If it was customary in that place, in that language at that time, to call roasted meat and boiled meat also cooked food, then he's forbidden to partake of all the above. If they were accustomed to use the term cooked food only to refer to meat cooked with water and spices, then he may partake of roasted meat. Similarly, with regard to smoked food or food cooked in the hot springs of Tiberias, which are very hot enough sometimes to cook. So we'll follow terminology used by the people of that city at that time. 2, if he took a vow not to partake of salted foods, what is the custom there and then? The salted foods mean everything, or the salted foods refer only to salted fish? Well, depending on what the local custom is, that's what he'll be forbidden. And similarly with the word pickled, which in Hebrew is kavush, which means soaked and soaking in this thing, like the cucumbers soak in the pickle barrel. If it's customary to call all pickled foods pickled food, then he's forbidden to partake of anything that's pickled. But if the term pickled food in that locale at that time only refers to pickled vegetables, then he's only forbidden to partake of pickled vegetables, but other things that are pickled, he may enjoy. 4, if some of the people would refer to food with one term and others would not use that term, we do not follow the practice of the majority. Instead, it's in doubt. Even if there's a significant minority, I'm not talking about 1 or 2 exceptions, but if there's a whole lot of people that use the other term or mean who use that term to mean something else, even we can't say we just go by the majority, because he might be part of that significant minority. That's a very reasonable possibility. So we're in doubt. Did he mean what the majority think, or did he mean what the significant minority think? So it's unresolved. If it's unresolved, then we have to take the stringent rule, and we have to say that he may not partake of either, including the more general vow as well. However, since we're not sure, if he violates the vow, he will not be liable for lashes, which he would be if we knew for a fact that he was in violation. 5, so based on that, a person takes a vow not to partake of oil. He just uses the word oil. But now what do you mean by oil? Well, in that place at that time, when they said oil, they could mean olive oil. They could also mean sesame seed oil. Or today here, there's many kinds of oil. My wife tells me to buy oil. I have to ask her, do you mean olive oil? Do you mean sunflower seed oil? Do you mean canola oil? There's half a dozen different types of oils, I'm sure. So a minority of the population also refer to sesame seed oil with the term oil. So we don't know which part does he belong to. What did he mean when he made that vow not to partake of oil? So we'll say he may not partake of either. 6, whenever an agent in a given locale would have to question the one who sent him as to what his intent was, it is considered in the category of the substance that was mentioned in the agent when the term is mentioned without a modifier. Meaning, but let's say you're in a place and the boss sends his worker to buy meat. And the guy comes back and he says, sorry, boss, I only found fish. Now, the question is, if somebody if somebody vowed not to partake of meat, does he mean meat and perhaps poultry, but not fish? Or maybe he's taking a very broad term. Maybe his intent was to forbid himself from having any kind of meat, including the meat of a fish. So it depends if the person would have to ask, does he mean this or that? That means that fish would be included in meat in that place. In all places, if he takes a vow not to partake of meat, he'll be forbidden to partake of fowl and of the entrails. Entrails. What is entrails? The kishkis, what?
Yeah, that's right.
Intestines.
Yeah. But he will be, here's the good news, guys. You'll still be permitted to partake of kosher grasshoppers. Aren't you excited? I know that's your secret delicacy, right? We learned it previously. There are kosher grasshoppers. Not all, you have to know which ones. Ask your friendly Yemenite Jew, he'll tell you which ones. If it appears that at the time he took the vow, his intent was only to forbid meat from an animal or an animal and fowl, then he'll be permitted to partake of fish, even in a place where one would question it. So again, if it's clear from his intention, if he said, oh, I'm having too much red meat today, this week, it's not good for my cholesterol or something. I'm not having any more meat. That would mean that he plans on having fish. So I would not think to ban fish if that was the way he expressed himself. 7, if he takes a vow against partaking of cooked food, he may partake of a soft boiled egg. Okay, so the egg is not called cook until it's hard boiled. If he takes a vow not to partake of food boiled lightly in a pot, he's only forbidden to partake of those foods that are boiled in a pot, for example, groats, dumplings, and the like. If he forbade himself from partaking of anything placed in a pot, then anything cooked in a pot will be forbidden to him. Again, all depends on his language and the way he expressed himself, which gives us an insight into what he really meant in his mind. 8, he's not going to partake of fish, he vows. He may still partake of the brine and a dip made with fish oil. If he vows not to partake of milk, he may still partake of the whey. That's the, what do I call that in Yiddish? Some people love that stuff. What's it called, The fatty milk part on the top of the milk. Anyway, in English it's whey. I forget what the Yiddish is.
It's curds and whey.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember the Yiddish word.
Fleshka.
Close, not exactly. Fleisch is meat,
Tummy.
so it wouldn't be fleshka.
Not fleshka, similar, anyway.
Yeah, it's something like that. Pleshka, something like that. Thank you. Okay. So if he says no milk, he could have the whey. If he says no cheese, he's forbidden to partake of both salted and unsalted cheese. Can't say only meant the Swiss cheese, Cheese is cheese. 9, if he says no grains of wheat, he's forbidden to partake of wheat kernels, fresh or cooked. If he says neither wheat nor grains of wheat will I taste, he's forbidden to partake of either flour or bread. He says I will not taste wheat, he's forbidden to partake of baked goods, but permitted to chew kernels of wheat. If he says I will not partake of grains of wheat, he's permitted to partake of baked goods, but may not chew kernels. If he says neither wheat nor grains of wheat, he's forbidden to partake of baked goods, nor may he chew kernels. And if he makes a vow forbidding himself from partaking of grain, he is forbidden only to partake of the 5 species of grain, which are wheat, barley, rye, oats, and spelt. rice and millet would not be included. 10. Takes it down not to partake of green vegetables, he may still partake of squash. If he said not to partake of leek, he's permitted to partake of the poret. What's this poret? Anybody want to quickly look down at number 20 and tell us what poret is? If a person takes a vow not to partake of cabbage, he's forbidden to partake of the water cooked with cabbage, because that's considered the same. However, if he vows not to partake of the water in which the food is cooked, he may partake of the food itself. Person takes a vow not to partake of sauce, is permitted to partake of the spices that made up the sauce. If he says no spices, he's permitted to partake of the sauce. If he takes a vow not to partake of groats, he's forbidden to partake of the thick sauce produced by the groats. 11. A person takes a vow not to partake of the produce of the earth, is forbidden to partake of all the produce of the earth, but is permitted to partake of fungi and mushrooms. So it seems that mushrooms do not take their nutrition from the ground, but from the air. If he says everything that grows upon the earth, not from the earth, anything that grows on the earth, then he's forbidden to partake of fungi and mushrooms too. Although they do not derive their nurture from the earth, they do grow upon the earth. 12. When a person takes a vow forbidding himself to partake of the produce of a particular year, he's forbidden to partake of all the produce of that year. He is, however, permitted to partake of kid goats, lambs, milk, eggs, and chicks. So we assume produce means things that grow in the ground. If, however, he says all of the products, not produce, but products, anything that grew this year, then he will be forbidden to partake of all of the above, meaning the milk, eggs, chicks, and goats. If he takes a vow forbidding himself many of the fruits of the kayets, which is summer fruits, what does that mean? It means he may not partake of figs. So kayets doesn't necessarily mean summer, but fruit harvested by hand rather than cut from the tree with a knife. So it refers to the fig harvest alone. 13. In all of the above and the similar cases, again, the general principle that we follow the intent of the words people use at that place, in that language, at that time when the vow was taken. Based on this principle, one should rule and say the person who took the vow is forbidden to benefit from these entities and permitted to benefit from these entities, depending on the language and what is the accepted meaning in that locale at that time. 14. No grapes, he says. He can still have wine, even grape juice. If he says no olives, he can partake of olive oil. If he says no dates, he can partake of the honey that comes from dates. If he says no grapes that blossom in the fall, he's permitted to partake of vinegar that is produced from them. If he takes a vow not to partake of wine, he's permitted to partake of apple wine. Have you ever heard of apple wine? I actually never heard of apple wine, but I heard of raisin wine. In America, they used to sell raisin wine around Pesach.
Don't they mean cider, Rabbi?
Maybe. If he says no oil, he may partake of sesame seed oil. If he says no honey, he may enjoy date honey. If he says no vinegar, he may partake of vinegar produced from grapes that blossom in the fall. If he says no vegetables, he's permitted to partake of vegetables that grow on their own. So we'll assume that he meant that which people harvested. He takes a vow not to wear clothing. Oy, how's he going to get out of the house? What's he going to do in the winter? He still may cover himself with sackcloth. That's not called clothing. A coarsely woven thick fabric or thick sheet or blanket. used as a rain shield. If he says he's not going to enter a house, he's forbidden to enter the loft as well, or the attic, it's part of the house. But if he says he will not enter the loft, he may enter the home. So the home is a more general, embracing term. If he says not to use a dargesh is a small little couch that people had at the foot of the bed. I remember in my late parents' home, they had a little, it was more of a seat, it was like a bench, an upholstered bench, like a little couch in front of their beds. My mother would sit on there when she got dressed. And in the olden days, it was more common, called the dargesh. So if he says he will not use the dargesh, he can still use the bed. But if he says he won't use the bed, he may not use the dargesh either, because the dargesh is essentially a small bed. 16, if he takes a vow not to enter a particular house, where does the prohibition begin? From the door frame, from the front door. If he takes a vow not to enter a particular city, where's the city limits? So he's permitted to enter the Shabbos limits. The Shabbos limits is 2,000 cubits, roughly 1 kilometer. You're allowed to walk outside the city limits. If you remember the laws of Shabbos, you're allowed to walk on Shabbos outside the city limits only for approximately 1 kilometer. In the city limits, you can walk 100 kilometers, doesn't matter. So is the 1 kilometer outside the city considered the city? No, it's not. If you say you're not going to enter the city, you can still go in that 1 kilometer. However, you are forbidden to enter its outlying areas, which is sort of the still part of the city limits. He says here in the notes that 70 cubits from the last house or something on the border of the town. So that's, what is it? About 150 feet or something. 17, when a person takes vow not to benefit from the residents of a city, okay, I will not benefit from any residents of this city. How do you define resident? Does he have to be born there? Does he have to have a visa to live there? Does he have to be a taxpayer? How do you define resident? So he says the resident is one who has been living there for a minimum of 12 months. If he says he vows not to benefit from people who live in this city, doesn't use the word resident. Anyone living in this city, that's a broader term. But then he's forbidden to benefit from anyone who has been there for 30 days or more. He's a city dweller. He's not a resident. Maybe he's a temporary resident. He's not quite a resident, but he's living there. He's been there 30 days. So he's included. You may not benefit from him either. 18, when a person takes a vow not to benefit from the water that flows from such and such a spring, he's forbidden to benefit from all the rivers that derive nurture from that wellspring. Although the name of the body of water has changed, it's now called the so-and-so river or the so-and-so well, and we don't associate it with the spring, but if that's the source for these bodies of waters, he will be forbidden to benefit from any of them. However, if he says he vows not to benefit from a specific river and he names it or spring, then he's only forbidden to benefit from that river or spring. 19, he takes a vow not to benefit from seafarers. He's permitted to benefit from those who dwell on land. If he takes a vow not to benefit from those who dwell on land, he's forbidden to benefit from seafarers as well. Because even if he's a sailor, he comes back to land sooner or later. So he's also a land dweller. If he takes a vow not to benefit from those who see the sun, he's forbidden to benefit even from the blind, because he means those who the sun shines upon. If he takes a vow not to benefit from those who are dark-haired, he's forbidden to benefit also from people who are bald and gray-haired, and permitted to benefit from women and children. If it is customary to refer to all people as dark-haired, then he's forbidden to benefit from everyone. So it all depends on what people mean at that time and that place. 20. If he takes a vow not to benefit from those who rest on Shabbos, from those who keep Shabbos, he's forbidden to benefit from all Jews, even those who are not necessarily observant, I would say, and also the Samaritans. The Samaritans, or the Kushim, they took upon themselves to be Jews. We weren't 100% sure of their genuine sincerity, but they basically kept the Shabbos. So if you take a vow, then you're including them. Basically, what does it mean? It means the Jews. Who keeps the Shabbos? Jews keep the Shabbos. Shabbos, the seventh day, is not kept by other people. So when he means Shabbos, those who rest on Shabbos, he means the Jews. In this case, also the Samaritans. If he takes a vow not to benefit from those who make pilgrimages to Jerusalem, it's forbidden to benefit from the Jews, but he may benefit from the Samaritans. He takes a vow not to benefit from B'nai Noach, the descendants of Noah. That is not Jews. Non-Jews are called B'nai Noach. So he's permitted to benefit from the Jews. 21, if he takes a vow not to benefit from the descendants of Abraham. Donald Trump made the Abraham Accords. And Dubai and UAE and Bahrain and Morocco. And it was very nice that he called it the Abraham Accords because they're all children of Abraham, right? The Jews, the Israelites, and the Ishmaelites are all sons of Abraham. But when it comes to the laws of vows, if he says he's not going to benefit from the descendants of Abraham, we assume he means Jews, not Ishmaelites. So he could still be permitted to benefit from the descendants of Ishmael and Esau, who was a grandson of Abraham. He is forbidden to benefit only from Jews, because the Torah says explicitly that Isaac, not Ishmael, will be your heir. If you argue with a Muslim, quote Genesis 21:12. Ki beyitzchok yikore lecho zora. Through Isaac will your offspring be named, and I will give you, Isaac, and only Isaac, the blessing of Abraham. So we have it in the Chumash, in the Bible, that Isaac and not Ishmael is the heir of Abraham. But of course, those who don't like us choose to ignore even the Bible, even if they believe in the Bible. 22. Now here we come to the uncircumcised part. If he takes a vow not to benefit from uncircumcised individuals, in Hebrew it's arelim, an orel. An orel means an uncircumcised person. Arelim is in the plural. If he says, I will not have any benefit from arelim, from uncircumcised people, what do you think he means? Does he mean a Jew who didn't have a bris because he's a hemophiliac or something? Or a Jew who grew up in Russia and never had a bris? That's not what he meant. When we use the term orel, we mean a goy. An uncircumcised is a sophisticated word for a non-Jew, or an interesting expression for a non-Jew. So if he says he will not benefit from uncircumcised people, we assume he means non-Jews. He therefore may benefit from a Jew who is not circumcised, because he didn't mean him. If he takes a vow not to benefit from circumcised individuals, he's forbidden to benefit from uncircumcised Jews because they're included in the circumcised people, but he will be permitted to benefit from circumcised Gentiles. The rationale is that the foreskin is identified with Gentiles, as Jeremiah states, for all the Gentiles are uncircumcised, although we know many Gentiles do get circumcised, especially in Africa. The Department of Health tells us that circumcision is very good to help prevent HIV/AIDS. And the government actually recommends circumcision today for health reasons. Jeremiah says all the Gentiles are uncircumcised, so therefore his intent is only to refer to those who are commanded concerning the mitzvah of circumcision, not to those who are not. I'll come back to the uncircumcised Jew in a moment. Let's just finish 23. When a person takes a vow not to benefit from the Jewish people, he's forbidden to benefit from converts as well, because they have joined the Jewish people. Doesn't mean born Jews only. If he takes a vow, however, not to benefit from converts, he's permitted to benefit from natural born Jews. If he takes a vow not to benefit from Israelites, he's forbidden to benefit from priests and Levites as well, because Israelites means Jews, and Kohanim and Leviim are also Jews. When he vows not to benefit from Kohanim and Leviim, that's very specific. So he will be permitted to benefit from Israelites who are not Kohanim and Leviim. If he vows not to benefit from Kohanim, he'll be permitted to benefit from Leviim. However, and if he says not to benefit from Leviim, he'll be permitted to benefit from Kohanim. If he vows not to benefit from his own sons, he'll still be permitted to benefit from his grandchildren. Even though many in the Chumash we see that grandchildren are called children also sometimes. But in this case, we assume he means his sons, not his grandsons. And all these and analogies matter. The laws regarding those that give an oath are the same, whether it's a vow or an oath. It goes by the language, what the intent was. How do we know what his intent was? What most people talk, used language at that time in that place. Now back just to conclude with this circumcised. I asked, is a Jew who's uncircumcised a Jew? What does the class think? What do you say, guys? Unmute yourselves and give me your opinion.
If his mother was Jewish, he's Jewish.
Thank you, Dave. So generally we say the definition of a Jew is one born of a Jewish mother or who has converted halachically. But I've heard many people say when the kid gets his bris, oh, now he's a proper Jew. Implying that if you don't have a bris, you're not a Jew. So Dave is quite right. A Jew is a Jew is a Jew. Even if he's uncircumcised, he's a Jew. You know, I just wrote a, sorry?
Rambam talks about uncircumcised Jews, so that's where, so he accepts there are uncircumcised Jews.
Okay, quite right. So you're supporting my contention. Thank you. I just wrote a foreword for a forthcoming book about the life of my late mother-in-law of blessed memory, who grew up in communist Russia and fought the communists and the KGB. They killed her father, but she managed to help her mother and the younger siblings. And eventually they got out, and eventually they came to live in Cleveland, Ohio, in the United States for decades and decades. And they made a big difference in Cleveland. At some stage, I think maybe in the 70s or 80s, a lot of Russian Jews settled in Cleveland. And my in-laws, who spoke fluent Russian, having been born there, adopted all these Russian immigrants. They had a soup kitchen for them. They gave them food every Sunday. My father-in-law would collect them and take them to shul. My mother-in-law got hundreds of these kids to go to Jewish day schools. And they organized maybe 500 Jewish boys and men of all ages who never had a bris in Russia to have a bris in America. There was a doctor who was a moil, and he became a specialist in doing adults, obviously under anesthetic, but maybe 500 boys and men of all ages. She helped get them a bris. So if they didn't have a bris, they're still Jewish. there are certain things in the Torah. It says if you don't have a bris, you may not partake of the korban pesach, of the paschal lamb. Something else they may not partake of. What is it? Escapes me. I think something meats from the altar. Anyway, the point is, an uncircumcised Jew is a Jew. Sometimes in halacha, if it says if a family lost two sons at their bris from bleeding, they were obviously hemophiliacs. And they couldn't stop the bleeding, and two sons died. The halacha says you do not give the third son a bris for fear that he too may die. Today, thank God, medical science is able to deal with that problem, and a doctor and expert moil, they get together and they do it in the hospital, and they have his blood type ready on hand, and they got a drip ready, and if they see they can't stop the bleeding, they'll give him a transfusion. And they have today, I think, ways of stopping the bleeding. Medical science has advanced. So today, that kid could have a bris. But once upon a time, that kid halachically would be not be meant to have a bris. So is he not a Jew? He's a Jew. I'll just end with a story. It's a bit of a sad story. There was a Russian Jew who came to South Africa, and somebody wanted to sign him up in the HOD, the Hebrew Order of David. Now, the Hebrew Order of David in their constitution has a clause that to be a member of the HOD, you have to be married according to the law of Moses and Israel. So they came to me with this Russian Jew to introduce him to me. Rabbi, would I give him a chuppah? He never had a chuppah in Russia. I said, it'll be my honor and pleasure. Well, we had to get documentation to make sure they're Jewish and they're allowed to marry each other, which is not a simple matter because very little documentation exists in communist Russia. But we never got that far. Why? Because I thought to myself, before I do a chuppah, maybe I should broach the subject of a bris. Maybe you should have a bris before the chuppah, if he doesn't have a bris. So ever so gently and delicately, I raised the issue of a bris, and unfortunately, I never saw the guy again. Which pretty much confirmed that he did
Never
not have
saw
a
the
bris,
guy.
unfortunately.
The unkindest cut of all, they say.
Very good, Dave. You're on the ball today.
Rabbi, can we go back to halacha number 8, where you were talking about the milk and the whey that is separated from it?
Yeah.
I think the term that you were looking for was plefka.
Plafka.
Yeah. But plefka is not whey. Plefka is the skin. When you warm milk up, it forms a skin on top. That's plefka.
Okay. And whey is?
Whey is the water. When you're making the cheese like I make, the curds, the cheese itself separates from the water. You can actually use that whey to make protein powder. I've done that as well.
You make cheese.
So,
Wowee, I'm so impressed. What else do you make?
A mess of things.
Make wine?
No.
You could have a cheese and wine party.
You could, no. But the white cottage cheese I make sometimes. Sometimes you get some milk that you've had for a little bit too long or something, and it starts tasting a little bit sour. So I make cottage cheese from that.
I'm very impressed. I didn't know you were so talented. Okay.
Well,
Is that the ultimate chol of Yisrael?
yes.
Exactly.
Sei gesund, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good
Thank
week.
you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Rabbi.